Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce AJ Wood, Senior Solutions Consultant at Adobe, up to the stage, and we will start this presentation.
Yeah. And we'll see if the clicker works. Great, that's awesome. How's everyone doing this morning? Good, good, good. The light's blinding me, so I can't see you, but that's okay. All right, so efficiency. The idea of quality of being efficient, having this maximum productivity gains with a minimum amount of energy and or effort, right? Best practices, process improvement. I know these are the terms that get you guys just fired up and your creative juices going, right? Yeah. If you're like me, when I think of the term efficiency, really for me it is the word I use to try not to swear in front of my kids when I walk in the family room and I step on some Legos, right? It's effing see, right? Maybe for some of you, it brings to mind Bob and Bob talking to you about how you should justify the intangibles of your position, right? Give you a little bit of background. Before I was an employee at Adobe, I actually was a vendor partner, and I spent a lot of my time working with individuals, small companies, large companies, in being better, doing more with their investment in Adobe products, right? Essentially through training, consulting, efficiency. Here on the screen, you can see a problem that I worked through 10 years ago with a customer. It is a simple production problem. Okay? On the left, you can see how they were actually doing a layout for a tag. You can see this is in InDesign. There are roughly 8 to 12 boxes here, okay, to do this layout. On the right is the exact same layout, done in a single text frame, using object, paragraph, and character styles. Okay? I think we can agree that while they look the same and the end result is the same, the item on the right would be more efficient. 10 years ago, I show this to customers. Through the years, I have introduced new methods to customers. And what I find interesting is a lot of customers revert to their old ways. So it got me thinking, what makes us efficient? What is the common character trait that we all in this room have and the various tasks and workflows that we carry through that makes us efficient? I don't care if you're brushing your teeth, doing some sort of recreational activity, doing your job as a designer, a modeler, retoucher, a UX designer, it doesn't matter. We all have a common characteristic that makes us efficient in those tasks. And as it turns out, it's because they're automatic. You don't think about them. You create. Who here, when they're writing a document, spell checks it as they write? A couple of you, right? No, we write something out, we hash through it, and then you go back and you make your corrections, right? When you're creating stuff, you're not trying to correct it as you create. You're in that moment, that energy is flowing. How you use the various software products, the various tools that you have in your different workflows, they have become ingrained. They are automatic. They are routine. In a word, they're a habit. So then I stepped back and I said, how does this relate to the different teams, the different departments, the different organizations that I work with? What's establishing their process? And a lot of times when we think about a process, we gather together, we figure out what the end goal is going to be, what the task is going to be, we have some discussions, some conversations, discuss our various options, maybe we do an evaluation, and eventually we come up with the process that is the thing. As I've interviewed and talked to various customers over the past 10 years, what I have found is at varying levels, whether it's individual, department, team, or an entire organization, a lot of times process is just a bunch of habits that have collected over time. This is how it's always been done. This is the way that we do it. This is why I still use Unsharp Mask in Photoshop. Now, that isn't to say that habits are a bad thing. I've known many photographers over the years. Hey, they're doing great things. And when I talk to them about, what kind of camera you're using, what's your workflow, how are you lighting things, well, they say, of course, I put it on P for professional. Right? And that's not a bad thing. But I think we can all agree, especially if you happen to be a photographer, that while P for professional works, does it give you the most options to explore the most creative possibilities that you might have as a photographer? Probably not. But we stick with what we know. We stick with our routine. We stick with the fact that I want to create as a photographer. I don't want to spend time futzing with all the different menu options. I talk to some photographers who do some great things, and they say, well, I fix it in Photoshop. Okay? Again, they stick with what they know. What is their routine? What works? Take you back to the problem that I solved 10 years ago. Now I know that habits are why, or is the common trait that makes us efficient. What is it about new methods? Why do some people adopt new methods and others revert to their old ways? It comes down to perception. Your initial prejudice, your tolerance, your prejudgment of that new method. Okay? If we wanted to latch on to new terms, your mindset. Do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? When I talk to different customers, I get responses like, it works. We're good. Everything's moving right along. We don't need to change. That's a great idea, but I think what we have is fine. Our profits are good. When I talk to individuals, when I drill into departments, it's change is hard. That new method sounds great, but change is hard. So I had to dig a little deeper and really get into how we form habits. And as it turns out, everyone is at habit with your workflow, your method, what you do. And when a new method is introduced, I don't care if it's more efficient. I don't care if you have 10 steps and I can show you 3. Your perception and the fact that you have to slow down, take in the information that I give you, build your knowledge in that information, develop that skill, practice it over and over again to make it a habit, for a lot of folks is painfully slow. A lot of times I introduce a new method and it's great and it's a cool feature. And then people go back to their desk and like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. Step 1, he said, go here in the menu. Step 2, he said, click that. Step 3, oh my gosh, I could have been done already. How many of you have ever been in a car with somebody else who's driving, they're going to a place that you know to go to and they take a different route? And you're like, if we had gone the way that I know to go, we'd already be there. Right? So first is that perception of things are going to be slower, that you have to take on the skill. And I found out that those that would take on that task, the key thing is they immediately saw the value in the new method. Okay, so 2 things had to happen. Number 1, whatever is being shown, whatever is being demonstrated, whatever you're potentially going to learn, you have to recognize the value right away. So that in that moment when your perception slows everything down, you realize there is going to be a benefit if you painstakingly go through it, learn it, develop the skill, do the practice. Okay, the best example I can think of for designers in the room, how many here are using a pen tablet for your stuff? Okay, pen tablet, all right? First time I used a pen tablet was painful. Right? In fact, lots of folks I know who pick up a Wacom tablet or a pen tablet for the first time and they've been using a mouse, right? Most of them put it down right away because it is a different feel, it's a different touch, it's a different method. It takes practice. You don't go from using a mouse right to using a pen tablet and do stuff. There is a learning process. Right? For those of you that have a pen tablet, if I took it away and gave you a mouse today, would that be good? No, you'd probably fight me tooth and nail, right? Using a mouse is like drawing with a brick. Right? So there has to be an immediate value that you see. If you recognize the value, then you'll put in the time to build new habits. So as leaders, how can we incorporate that into our teams, into our departments? Okay? Some of the methods I have seen: gamification. Okay? I work with customers that today have various processes to foster this idea of new ideas, new methods. One of those is gamification. Photoshop battles, right? Regularly held contests, whether they're weekly, monthly, what have you, that designers jump into, one for fun, maybe for some prizes, but mostly just for bragging rights, right? This fosters new methods, new ideas. Because you might have some folks who hold on to their old ways, but I'm sure you have plenty of other folks who are always embracing the new. And if those are your routine winners, you can bet everyone else is going to be asking about those techniques. How did you do that? The design was so cool. The other thing I recommend is appointing leaders in your various teams. Now, I don't mean the leader who's going to lead the way and everyone else is going to follow like sheep. I don't mean actually assigning the title. What I mean is find someone who wants to take on a task. I have customers right now who recognize those individuals on their teams who are always looking for the new. And they embrace that. And in some of the customers I work with, they make that person the designated a leader who's going to spread the knowledge to everyone else. Okay? At Adobe, I work on a great consulting team. And we have bi-weekly meetings where someone on the team has put together what we call a collab. Every quarter, the leader for those collab changes. The person responsible for the collab has to find the speaker, whether it's themselves or somebody else on the team or somebody from the product teams inside of Adobe. They have to come up with the topics, they have to set up the recording, set up the agenda. Okay? It gives everybody an opportunity to be a leader. It gives everyone an opportunity to discover new things, but it also creates a mechanism where we disseminate that information amongst the other team members. And last, I'll leave you with this. I would recommend that you make process improvement, you look at how you can incorporate process improvement as part of your regular conversation. I'm working with a customer right now where they do that once a quarter. Once a quarter, they choose a thing in their process workflow that they're going to break down and see, can we possibly make this better? And it might be new software, it might be new methods, it might be new something, but they pick one thing where they think they can build an improvement, and as a team collectively, they work on ideas to actually foster that. If we blow out bigger to your organizations, you as the creative people, as the departments, as the leaders, I know the other challenge that you sometimes run into is, hey, we want this new shiny thing because it'll let us do stuff. And in my personal experience, you run into IT, procurement, management, who says, yeah, that's great, I don't know what it is, and no, you can't have the money, okay? Because they foster onto, it already works. Things are going fine. Right? In a culture where you're creating this idea of efficiency, then you have to start looking at the language of those other departments. How can we communicate to them this intangible value? Right? The fact that we can turn out work faster or that we can work with what we have. Hey, as Andy was saying last night, do more with less. Yeah, thank you. Right? So, but as we can be more efficient, if you think about that, right, we can be more creative. Thank you very much.
So the reason I kind of did a cold start